Our DLO for today is I will learn how to graph a line. And our essential question, so go ahead and write this down. Our essential question is to graph the line y equals -1/2 x plus 2. So we're going to learn two different ways of doing this today. Tomorrow when you come back and finish this essential question, you can decide on which way you would like to do it, but that is how you will start it. Or this is the equation I want you to solve for tomorrow. We have 3 vocab words today. Our first vocabulary word is called the x-intercept. And the x-intercept is a point on a graph where y is equal to 0. So a point on a graph where y equals 0. Or in other words, where the graph crosses the x-axis. Our second vocab word today is the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is a point on the graph where x is 0. Or in other words, where the graph crosses the y-axis. So the x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis, the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, and last but not least, we're going to learn about a table of values. So a table of values is just something that we create where we put numbers or quantities arranged into rows or columns. So I'm just going to put numbers arranged in rows or columns. And all that this does is that it helps us keep information organized in one neat place. We're going to use it to help us graph a line today by creating a table of values. So these are the 3 vocabulary words that are going to be important for you to remember for today. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to continue writing those down, and then we'll go down to the notes section. So down here in our notes section, we're going to learn in this class at least 4 different ways of how to graph a line. So you can graph a line doing many things. So the first way you can graph a line is using 2 points like we did yesterday. So if you're just given 2 points, you can plot those 2 points, or in other words, coordinates. And then you can connect the 2 points using a straight line, and that's one way to graph a line. More often than not, this is not going to be the way that we do it, but if you are ever given 2 coordinates, this is one way to do it. The second way that we're going to actually talk about today is using a table of values. So by creating a table of values. And last but not least, the third way that we can graph a line is by using intercepts. And actually, this is not last but not least. Using intercepts, which we're also going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the second and third one today. So we're going to talk about creating a table of values and using intercepts. And then the last one we're actually going to talk about tomorrow, but using an actual formula for it. So using the equation, the slope-intercept form. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. So the first one we did yesterday, the last one we're going to do tomorrow. We're going to work on the middle two today. So we're going to work on graphing a line using a table of values. So if I was given an equation, all right, then you can create a table of values to plot. So for example, if I was given the equation y equals 4x plus 1, and I needed to create a table of values, I would put the independent variable, so I'm just going to abbreviate that, you guys can write it out, independent variable, all right, IV, which in this case it's x. All right, that one goes in the first column, and then the dependent variable, so I'm going to put dv for dependent variable, which in this case is y, goes in the second column. So to create a table of values, all you have to do is plug in random values for x. You can choose any values of x that you want, and then you have to plug them into the equation and figure out what y would equal. So for example, let's choose the values 0, 1, and 2. So here's where I'm plugging them in. I'm plugging those in for x. So I'm going to plug in 0 first. When I'm done with that, I'm going to plug in 1. When I'm done with that one, I'm going to plug in 2. And I'm also going to going to plug them in for the x values because those are my independent variables. So when I plug in 0, I get 4 times 0 plus 1. And that's just from plugging it in right there. So 4 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 1 is 1. So my y value would equal 1. So in other words, in this specific equation, y equals 4x plus 1, when I plug in 0, my output, so my input is 0, my output is 1. So I have the coordinate or the ordered pair 0, 1. So my next one, let's try 1. Let's plug in 4 times 1 plus 1. Well, 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 plus 1 is 5. So this is the coordinate 1, 5. And I'm getting those numbers from right here. So this is the coordinate 1, 5. Or in other words, the ordered pair 1, 5. And then let's try 2. So I plug in 2. 4 times 2 plus 1. That would be 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 plus 1 is 9. So this is the ordered pair 2, 9. And then I can come over here and I can graph it. So my x values, I'm going to plug in 0, 1, and 2. And on my y-axis, I go all the way up to 9. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then when I plot these points, I have 3 points to plot. 0, 1, that's right here. The point 1, 5, so that's 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 1, 5. And the point 2, 9, so 2, 9 would be way up here. And then I'm going to do the very, very best that I can to connect these with a straight line. And that is one way to graph a line. So that's graphing a line using a table of values. All right, so I have my independent variable, my dependent variable. I choose random values for x, and I plug them into the equation to figure out what y would equal at those x values. All right, the second way we're going to learn how to graph a line today is by using intercepts. Using intercepts. So to find the x-intercept, so let's just take one little set of notes here. To find the x-intercept, I'm just going to abbreviate that for intercept. To find the x-intercept, plug in 0 for y. And let's look back up at the definition again about why we do that. If you look back up at the top, the definition of the x-intercept is a point on the graph where y is 0, or where y equals 0. So if we want to know what the x-intercept, what the x-intercept is, all we have to do is plug in 0 for y, and that will tell us where the graph crosses the x-axis. And vice versa, to find the y-intercept, all you have to do is plug in 0 for x. because the definition of the y-intercept is where the graph, where x equals 0 on the graph. So we're going to plug in 0 for x. So for our first example, and I know this is kind of near the bottom, so hopefully we don't run out of room. But let's say that we wanted to graph y equals negative 2x plus 4. So when I plug in, I could have used the table of values for this one as well. So if you want to use a table of values, you obviously could, but I'm just going to teach you one other way of doing it in case you like the other way. So to find the x-intercept, so this is the first one, the x-intercepts, I'm going to plug in 0 for y. So I have 0 equals negative 2x plus 4. If I subtract 4 from both sides, I get negative 4 equals negative 2x. And then I solve for x by dividing both sides by negative 2, and I get that x equals positive 2. So my x-intercept is positive 2. To find my y-intercept, I do the opposite. I plug in 0 for x. So I have y equals negative 2 times 0. That's plugging in 0 for x plus 4. Negative 2 times 0 is 0, so 0 plus 4 is 4. So my y-intercept is 4. When I go to graph this, my x-intercept is on the x-axis, so I come over here to positive 2. And my y-intercept is on the y-axis, so I come up here to positive 4. And I put a point here, and I put a point here. And I connect those the best that I can with a straight line. And that's the second way that you can graph. So today we learned 2 ways of how to graph. We learned how to graph using a table of values. All right, that's the first way, where you can just plug in random values for x and solve for y. Or we learned how to graph using the intercepts, all right, where you can just find the x and y intercepts by plugging in 0 for y and then plugging in 0 for x, and then plotting them on the graph and just connecting those 2 points. So this is 2 ways of how to graph a line. So that's all for today. Bring this back tomorrow. You guys will answer the essential question up at the top and write a summary down below. All right.